So we finished 11.1, in which we were comparing the mean but for dependent samples. Particularly the matched pairs design was of big importance to us. Now we're going to move on to work on independent samples. So independent samples, when we're working with this, we're going to be interested in two main things, just like in 11.1, honestly. You can test whether the mean of the first group is equal to the mean of the second group or not, right? Less than 0. Or equivalently, you can subtract them, right? Subtract mu2 from mu1, which would mean that the difference is equal to 0 or the difference is less than 0. Or it could be not equal to 0 or greater than 0, depending. So the weird thing about this is that it follows the t distribution, but with some pretty big caveats. And it has this very large t statistic involved, and the degrees of freedom is actually a really complicated formula. So what the author has done is said, just take the smaller of n minus 1, n1 minus 1 or n2 minus 1, whichever. Take the smaller one, because the real degrees of freedom is just huge, insane formula that we're not going to deal with. So there's the, hey, same 6 steps as before. That should be looking familiar. There's this god-awful test statistic in there. See it right there? It's kind of an abbreviated version of the test statistic, but that's okay. We're going to be using Excel to find our t-values and or our p-values and so on. All right, so let's do it. All right, a 30-month study evaluated the degree of addiction that teenagers form to nicotine once they begin experimenting with smoking. Random numbers were used to sample 679 7th grade students in 2 Massachusetts cities. Of them, 332 students who had ever used tobacco by the start of the study were subjects evaluated. The response variable was constructed using a questionnaire design developed for the study called the Hooked on Nicotine Checklist, HONC. There was a list of 10 questions, such as, have you ever tried to smoke but couldn't? Do you ever have strong cravings to smoke? Blah, blah, blah. The HONC score is the total number of questions to which a student answered yes during the study. Each student's HONC score falls between 0 and 10. The higher the score, the more hooked on nicotine a student is judged to be. The study considered explanatory variables such as gender that might be associated with the HONC score. So here you go. All right, so here's the distribution of those hooked on nicotine scores. The males are the darker bars and the females are the lighter bars. And you can see it seems like there's a big difference between men and women right here, right? And so on. And then here we go. So the sample size. So they only looked at 7th graders that have ever tried nicotine. They have females, sample size of 150, males, sample size of 182. HONC score for females, the mean was 2.8. For males, it was only 1.6. So the question, of course, is, do boys and girls in 7th grade have a very big difference between them for nicotine addiction? And I'm sure that's what that's what we're testing. So test whether there's a significant difference between male and female students in terms of their HONC scores. What does this say about their addiction level? Okay. So first thing we're going to need to do is we're going to need to create some hypotheses. So we can do this a couple ways, but in particular, we're interested in, does the, I really hate to call these men because these are 7th grade kids, but female, you can say male, female, I suppose that would work. Male students, female students. Okay. Are they equal? And we assume that they are. We assume that 7th graders for boys and girls are the same. And then the question is, are they not the same? Right? It says test whether there's a difference, significant difference. It doesn't even tell you what kind of difference, so we could just say not equal and female. Okay, so that's one way we can do this, right? The other way, hold on one second, I'll show it to you. There it is. So that's the other way you can write these hypotheses. They're the same thing, because all you're doing is subtracting the female from the male, right? And having 0 left over on the other side. So one way or another, that's your step 1. Oopsie. Oh my goodness. Step 1. Hypotheses. Step 2, you need a significance level. They didn't really give you one, so make it up. Maybe they did. Hold on. Nope, I don't see one in the problem. So let's call it 0.45. And I'll be back here for the next step.